Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video, I like to ask what might have been a rhetorical question a few months ago and now is much less clear cut. Should the EU, at least the EU Commission, care about what the British public think of either them or Brexit? But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So, I hate the fact that the UK left the EU, of course. Hate the fact that just enough people were conned into voting for it in 2016. Hate the fact that we were deliberately pulled out of the EU on conditions that were denied during that 2016 referendum by the very people who told those lies. And I hate the fact that we were ripped out when even prominent Brexiteers like Jacob Rees-Mogg were happy to publicly admit that a majority would vote against it had there been a confirmatory referendum. But we have left. We're no longer part of the EU, and so we are no longer EU citizens. But should the EU care about what we think anyway? In two very obvious ways, no, not at all. The first is that we don't elect any representatives for the EU anymore. So, of course, that means by definition, it's a political organisation. We have no representation. Of course, they don't have to care for us. If they paid attention to us, doesn't that mean they're paying less attention to the people they need to pay attention to? If you want to influence people, then ideally you are part of the group. But if you're not going to be part of the group, you have to at least engage with them in some mutually beneficial manner. We're not part of the EU, so we're not part of the group, and the attitude of our government has been positively hostile. Also, I've said a few times that when I see articles in the pro-Brexit media about how the EU are terrible people and inflicting punishments on the UK, like the Express this week who said the EU were unleashing a new Brexit punishment. And what is the nature of this punishment? Turns out, as it always is, treating the UK, which demanded to become a third country, demanded it. We want to be a third country. They're treating us like a third country. What do you mean? We wanted to be a third country. Well, this is how we treat third countries. What? And that's how it always is. And no one seems to turn around to the authors of the Express and say, but you said we would have all the power. You said we'd hold all the cards. You said we'd be able to do our own thing. Why are you now moaning about you were moaning about the EU when we're in the EU. You're moaning about them now. Make your mind up. And whenever I've seen articles like this, I have always thought to myself as well, and actually it's sometimes said in videos, why are they pushing this? Who are they trying to convince? The only people they're influencing are the British public. Well, we no longer have any influence over matters. And so when you consider that the EU no longer need to negotiate anything with the UK, they've got their treaties, it's all what they wanted. Does it really matter to them what the British public think? No, of course not. It shouldn't at all. We're not part of the organisation. We're not engaging with them in any acts of good faith. And we don't influence anything that they do anymore. We're not even close to being in any shape to rejoin, regardless of how people think, regardless of how many people in the country regret leaving, and especially how people would feel if there were actually an honest public debate. But we won't have an honest public debate, even when it comes up again. And it's not politically possible to have any moves to rejoin with the current Conservatives in power. The media is largely urging against it as well. So the obvious response is all day and all night. Of course, the EU don't care about what the British public think and don't need to and probably shouldn't. And I saw somewhere a poll suggesting that people in Britain feel a European identity less strongly than anywhere else in Europe. Though Brexit still features in the Irish media, it just rarely crops up on the continent. It's done with. All very tragic, of course, but they have their own concerns now. There's a depressing separation on both sides. We've actually separated, which is exactly what the Brexiteers wanted, to not feel part of the same community. For that separation is happening. We can see it. But, and it's a big but, So my earlier idea that the EU don't need to involve themselves at all in what the British public think, why would they, based on the notion that we no longer influence anything that's important to them. Yes, sure, we might elect a decent government at some point who will engage with the EU once again and benefit both sides. And that will be of interest to them. But that's for later. But then we had the statement from an EU diplomat recently. I talked about it, I think last week, wasn't it? When I was discussing the pause in legal action from the EU. Now, for those who don't remember, the EU took legal action against us, April, I think it was, or maybe March, for unilaterally breaching the terms of the withdrawal agreement. They paused it recently, saying that they wanted to dial down tensions in order to give the UK government time to consider its position. An EU diplomat was quoted as saying that they were basically afraid that our unelected Brexit minister, David Frost, was looking for any pretext to suspend the Northern Ireland Protocol. Yeah, obviously, that would plunge the whole situation into chaos. They believe that Frost might use the legal action as one such pretext. Now, I said at the time that this was surprising, in my opinion, naive, quite frankly. It's given in to blackmailers. And when does that ever work out well? But consider what they're saying. They're saying they need the UK government to behave in a certain way. Granted, all they actually want Johnson to do is to comply with the treaties that he said were fantastic deals as he was signing them. They don't want anything special, unlike us, but that is nonetheless a behaviour that they can't take for granted anymore. The EU have also recently said that they now suspect that Boris Johnson never intended to honour the agreements in the first place. Yeah, they've just come to the conclusion that Boris Johnson may not actually be the most honest of people. So the situation is as follows. The EU need the UK government to honour its commitments. Although the EU have treaties, legally they're absolutely in the right. You know, they've got the treaties they wanted, all signed, sealed and delivered. They're not getting the honouring of those commitments. They also don't feel that they have the legal mechanisms to enforce compliance. Otherwise, they would not be seeking to appease the blackmailers. They would go, look, we're in the right, you're going to do this or else. That would be the attitude. The statement from the EU diplomat, in my mind, changed everything. Pausing legal action because you're afraid of what David Frost will do to the protocol suggests they have no way to force compliance. I cannot strongly enough say, again, how reckless I think the EU have been in agreeing anything with Boris Johnson without cast iron safeguards that are needed when dealing with this calibre of liar. I thought they had them. They insisted they had them. They talked about the mechanisms in the Trade and Cooperation Agreement to apply tariffs as a way of forcing compliance. What happened to that then? Why aren't they using those measures? But the situation is as it is. The EU seem to have messed up how to deal with it. Well, what would get the UK government to honour its own treaties? Public opinion. Although the Conservatives do not have to trigger another election for several more years, even though they seem to want one fairly soon, public opinion still matters a great deal. There is no value to the Conservatives in holding power for a little while longer if it is so much against strong public mood that they then fall and remain shut out of power for a generation. Perhaps forever, realistically, if we talk about the ones in control of the Conservative Party right now. Because if proportional representation is installed, curtains for them. Brexit isn't over. If the Conservatives fall foul of the public mood in a big way, they could easily find themselves out of power, and then by the time the public have softened their attitude to them and they might start to become a bit more electable, finding themselves working with a system of proportional representation and back in the EU, or at least on the inevitable path to rejoining. You know, long before the public soften their attitude to them, if they do not keep enough of the public on side. The Conservatives understand that they need to keep the public on side to remain electable. This is why Conservative MPs, I was talking about this morning, Conservative MPs in areas of high food insecurity have suddenly started talking about food insecurity. Never mind the fact that they consistently voted against measures that would have prevented it. It's why Conservatives keep talking about all the nurses and police officers they're hiring, even though it's nowhere near the number they've cut, so it's still a massive net loss. It's why Boris Johnson has gone through so many U-turns despite having a huge parliamentary majority. A poll reported in The Independent has said that more voters blame the EU for Brexit trade problems than the UK government. 31% blame the government, 45% blame the EU. It also said 23% weren't even aware that there were any problems with the implementation of, for example, the Northern Ireland Protocol. And I know how insane that is, but we couldn't possibly have voted for Brexit without a media in this country working very hard to promote quite spectacular levels of ignorance. Put it this way, if you're going to get the UK government to change its policy on something, then pressure needs to be applied. That's obvious. That pressure can be, in general terms, external or internal. Pausing their legal action is the EU saying they don't think they have any definitive external pressure to bring to bear. At least not right now. That's just a holding position. That's not forever. But right now, they don't believe they've got the external pressure to bring about that change of attitude. So the pressure, therefore, has to be internal. So although for many reasons the EU, of course, don't need to consider British public opinion, we are now a little island to the north of Europe that's cut away from everything else. But if it wants a change in attitude from the British government, and it doesn't believe it can force that change in attitude themselves, then they are going to need to take account of public opinion here. Maybe even engage with it. Maybe even a charm offensive. Change the public's perception and you change the government's behaviour. What won't change the government's behaviour is easing what little external pressure there was and giving them more time to think about what they've done. Because what they think they've done is got the EU to remove that external pressure. But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.